It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Time for the Security Cocktail Hour. I'm Joe Patty.
I am Adam Roth.
All right, Adam, how you doing today?
Do you really want me to say?
No, I want you to answer like normal people and say, so pretty good, how are you? Even if your
I'm
day was
doing
rotten.
incredible.
Okay, you're doing
Things
incredible?
are great.
All
The
right.
world is perfect. There's rainbows and
Excellent.
blue skies.
There you go. Remember, this is entertaining. No one wants to hear your problems on this show. All right?
That's another show.
Yeah, that's a whole different show. Okay? So look, you are a native Brooklynite, are you not?
No, I'm not. I was a native Queens person that moved to Brooklyn, but hey, represent.
Oh, really? Oh, man. Well, you spent a lot of formative years in Brooklyn, though.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay, so I'm sure that you have heard, even though you're a little young for this, so am I. I'm sure you have heard of the great Yogi Berra, who was
Yogi Berra. I love Yogi Berrisms.
Everyone loves Yogi Berra. He was the great nemesis of the Dodgers, among other people. But he was also a philosopher of sorts. And he had many famous quotes that everyone loves. And one of them was, baseball is 90% mental, the other half is physical. Well, security is kind of like that too. I don't know if it's 90% mental, but I've been saying for a long time, psychology and culture play a way bigger role in security than a lot of people realize.
I must have played a lot of baseball because people tell me I'm 90% mental.
Yeah, well, also, I can tell you, being a security manager, when you're admin's manager, I was also his therapist, and he's behind on his bill, just so everyone knows, all right?
Yes, sir.
But so, we talked about this a little before when we talked about passwords, and today we're doing a whole show on culture and psychology and a lot of non-technical stuff that is very interesting. We think people will like. Today we have a special guest, Leticia Espinosa.
Oh, hello,
Lady,
hello.
welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
I didn't want Letty on the show, but it's all good, Joe.
I only came on
You
this
didn't
job.
want. Okay, Letty. So welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself before we talk about drinking.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been in the industry for quite a while. I would say about a good 15 years, 16 years. Mostly focused on infrastructure, and then specializing that into business continuity and disaster recovery, which almost tends itself to play into security. So I'm very, very honed into what's need to happen in security because that impacts what we're going to do for business continuity and how the infrastructure needs to be secured. That's overall kind of like where I am.
Oh, great. Yeah, well, it used to be with the old CIA thing, in security, we'd say confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But a lot of security people, like myself, gave up on availability and just, gave it off to the, disaster recovery and business continuity. It became a thing in and of itself.
Yes, it did. Yes,
so that makes sense. So there's a whole sub-discipline now.
I'll tell you this, though. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I have to give Letty a lot of credit. When I was first implementing her NAC, Letty was always there for me to help me with the data centers.
So I didn't want you to mess anything up because then I had to do double work.
That's true.
NAC is network admission control. It controls what can connect to the network, and it is a notoriously difficult and painful thing to implement. And Letty is one of those people, one of those engineers that you go to eventually. Whether you start with her or not, it seems like eventually you're like...
Eventually, I end up.
We need Letty to get this working. So.
You know how many coffees and beers I had to buy her?
Yeah. Speaking of beers and liquor, this is the Security Cocktail Hour. And as our guest, the choice of cocktail has fallen to Letty, and we have it right here. Why don't you tell us what we got?
So I'm big on whiskey, smoky whiskeys. Smokier the better. But I recently discovered Mezcal, which is a very smoky version of tequila. It's delicious. Over ice. You can mix it with whatever you want, but over ice, some water. It's good. 3 sips. Remember, you have to do 3 sips.
3 sips. All right. I just took the first one and it almost took me out before we started. Let's try another one. We'll try it with some ice this time.
It's a little better.
That is very good. It is smoky. And
Yeah.
I know it's not tequila, but it is reminiscent of tequila, but far more interesting.
Far more interesting. Yeah.
And this is a far better one you picked out than the tequila in the plastic bottle I used to get in college. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily give you a hangover like tequila does.
All right. Okay. Well, that's cool because we got to record again tomorrow morning early. So excellent.
Smells like you ever opened up like a can of Band-Aid, like the original Band-Aid that used to come in the metal can that is handed down from generation to generation.
Oh, you're right. That is kind of interesting.
It kind of smells like the Band-Aid.
Okay. There we go. All right. Well, definitely an interesting one. Everyone, get out there and try some mezcal, but don't put us on pause. Keep rolling. Anyway, okay. So, cybersecurity. When we talk about security and IT in general, culture does matter quite a bit. One of the things we found, and we've talked about it before, is that, it's getting to one of the simplest things is that, the bad guys try to exploit people's behavior. There's social engineering, there's phishing, and basically trying to get people to, do things that they really shouldn't do, that they should know better. And, it can be very tough on the security people, but
I was going to say one size does not fit all. The corporate culture of a security team in one place might be the best possible place for you. However, the security at another corporation, the cybersecurity team might not even be anywhere near a fit. So while security culture matters, it also matters if you are a right fit for that culture.
Well, also the security team. And the way it's run has to be the right fit.
Yes.
Right? I mean, Letty, I'm sure you've been tortured by many security teams that don't understand what you're doing and what you need to do and what's realistic.
Or nor did I care.
That, of course, would not include me and Adam.
But. Yeah, but nor did I care. But don't single me out.
I mean, that's the whole point, right? So cybersecurity for the longest time has been about getting the right tools in place and putting the right controls and putting the right policies. But when you really think about it, the weakest link in every single, security networking is us humans. But then we're also the first line of defense at the same time. We have to go in there and fix it when something goes bad. But we don't do anything to change the culture and behavior of how we work, how we do what we do, right? It's all about just getting it done.
I so agree with you because, we call this layer 8 in networking, right? So for those who don't know, there's 7 layers of the OSI model. Those are the layers that we talk about when we do networking. It goes from physical all the way up to application. But what we kind of joke about is layer 8. And layer 8 is the hands behind the keyboard. And while a human can be the best possible person for an organization in preventing disasters, they can also be the worst. So I agree with you. Education and culture and explaining to people why things are done, not just they shouldn't do it. So, for example, we tell people sometimes in teams, don't do this, don't do that, but we don't tell them why. And if they understand why, they might be more likely not to repeat the same actions with an understanding of this is what you should not do. Does that sound right, Letty?
That's about right. I mean, and that's the thing, right? So we get the awareness training, right? Annually. I think every company now almost has to do that, even if they don't want to, just the policy for insurance purposes or whatever it is. But most people just put it on the second screen, click, 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 next, and
yeah. Yeah, let me explain to everyone what security awareness training is if you haven't had the pleasure of going through it. With security awareness training, what happens is it's like, your security team says, oh, here's the annual training, and maybe you get something online, or they drag you to a class, or something like that. And it's something that, it used to be maybe 20 minutes where you'd sit through a flash or an animation or whatever,
Yeah.
and you'd have to do it. Now it's getting longer and longer and longer as we've added more and more stuff, and it's looped in there with all the HR stuff you got to do,
Right.
and harassment, and if you're a bank, money laundering, and
And multinational.
right, all exactly, all that mandatory
Right.
training you have to do that's
It's
so
just a
important.
checkbox.
And that's it. And people just go through it and click through it. You can tell. And the problem is that even when people are paying attention and they're diligent, and they are, how long does it last? We even see that with, like, you can even tell. We've seen kind of from a data, but also anecdotal, you know, perspective, that, like, wow, right when the security training is out, when people are taking it, the phishing gets better. People click less because it's fresh in their minds. They're thinking about it because they don't want to get in trouble. Like, 2 months later, it's back where it was before.
It's all behavior. And I think that's part of the creating a cybersecurity culture, right? And understanding it. Not everybody in the organization is going to resonate with the word cybersecurity. You might have an assistant. A
They
word
don't. I thought
cybersecurity.
everyone lives for this.
She probably pictures like hackers and behind in Russia with the green letters on the screen. She's like, well, I'm not doing all of that. I don't have to worry about anything. But they do. They do. She might be, involved with certain emails that she's getting from outside vendors, and I'm saying she, could be a he too. Um, but it's so. I think creating the culture to enhance the behavior of how people work, and it's not about cybersecurity, right? But protecting systems and data. You have to protect our
So
systems and data, and achieving that
yes,
is quite difficult because it's a culture change across the board.
in it, and but let's talk. Let's be honest, right? Let's be really, really honest, because I haven't been up until this episode. Um, People look at training in two different ways, and sometimes it's both. The third way is both. Security training for most organizations, and I hate to say this, is about a checkbox.
Oh,
It's
totally.
It's
Absolutely.
to say that we did the work, and then we hope that the people really understood what they did. We don't go above and beyond. We don't spend extra money in a lot of organizations. And then the second part of that is that the people that do learn are not necessarily the people that are going to do it. It's the people that don't really learn, who keep on doing it and don't understand that they're not grasping the concepts of the training. Now, what I mean by that is this: is you can go through all the training and see all the videos, and it can be really animated. And don't click a link, hover over it, or don't open a file that you don't know who the person is, and people will still do it. So unless we start moving towards a culture, yes, the key word, culture, of not only doing a checkbox but really learning and grasping what these trainings are really about, we're still destined to make the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah, it's really challenging. And one of the things I want to say before we even get to dealing with that is, with the checkbox stuff, everybody falls into the checkbox trap, because that's really, and we're going to get to this too with other things, that's really what you're judged on. That's an easy metric that you have to show, your senior management, often your board, but it's also what you have to show your regulators, your customers, your clients, your insurance companies. They want to see, did everyone take the training? Did they do it? Were they? It's always funny too when they say, "Well, what if they don't do it? Are they punished?" We're like, yes, we make them sit in the corner with a dunce cap. What are you going to do? No one gets fired for
And
this.
I stopped doing that.
At least not in most places. At some places, people get yelled at, really nasty.
It's a good point, because that's actually reading up about cybersecurity culture in the workplace. That's actually one of the things that you need to do is consequences, right? I mean, you don't just go show up drunk to work and maybe the first time it was an accident, but the second time, we got to talk to HR.
Well, Letty, you realize doing this podcast, Adam and I are drunk at
Yeah.
work all the time. But aside from that,
You're your own HR, so it's good. I mean,
that's right.
but I
Um,
mean, maybe bad analogy there, but it's what I'm saying. Like there, I think that is one of the ways to fix the behavior, because it's about fixing the behavior of how people work and have cybersecurity conscience in their day to day, right? If you have
yeah,
a file and it's on a team site, there's no need for you to download it onto your laptop. Just open it directly in the Word app or whatever, edit it and save it. But so many people are so used to, like I mentioned, they've been going to school career for a quarter of their lives, right? Learning a specific method to work and expecting them to change that overnight. It's difficult.
well,
So
not
it's
not even overnight. There are so many things in IT that can be improved on. Especially, God, I mean, I hate so many things that I know we can get rid of, and not just in security, but some for security reasons, like email and attachments. We don't need email and attachments anymore. We don't need it. There are better ways to do it. There are safer ways to do it. I mean, virtually everyone has access to it, even at home, whether you realize it or not. But it's what people are used to. It's easy, and people absolutely will do the thing that lets them do their job and do what they want to do.
better.
The fastest and the easiest, the better, or what they perceive
Or
as
what they
better.
perceive as
And
better. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, what they perceive as
They've
better.
been doing
And
it this way
I mean,
for so long.
yeah, and we've seen so much resistance. Not, I mean, I learned this the hard way. Years ago when I was a younger, less experienced security manager, I had this concept of, well, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to partner with the other IT people and the user people. And I say, we're going to do something where it's not only more secure, but it's easier to use and it's better and more effective. And we'll do a focus group and we'll have all these charts and all these things and it'll be wonderful and everyone will love it. And yeah, people still like to do things the old way.
So
No
there's
matter what.
so I'm gonna jump in on there, right? There's a comic strip. I forgot who it is, and the comic strip shows the perception of the different people on what something is. The swing, how the salespeople sold it. The swing, how the customers saw it. The swing, like you're building a swing. How the project manager sees it. The swing, how your mom sees it. And the reason why I'm bringing this up again, it goes back to culture. The IT infrastructure team might not even care or understand what the security team does. And the security team might say, why doesn't the infrastructure team understand the basic parts of security? And then you might have the help desk that says, well, I can bypass this control and make it easier for you, Mr. CISO or Mr. CFO or Mr. C-level person or partner. So we all have a culture of doing things our own way with their own perceptions and built-in biases, and that's not gone away.
Well,
Neither has your gender bias saying Mr. and Mr., but anyway.
well,
just kidding.
That's a good segue there, because if you think about it, right, it's for decades, forever, the reward is, if you're in school, you do your homework. You in high school, you pass, you get an A, you get to college, you get that amazing degree, you get into a job, right? There's rewards, and people try to do what they need to do to get to that reward. When it comes to cybersecurity, there is no reward for doing the right thing, for not sharing the password, for calling things out. There's no reward, right? The same way there's no consequences if you don't do your awareness training. If you reward good behavior,
well,
it's like puppies.
Not serious ones. And you're right, Letty. It's like, the reward of my gratitude as the security manager has really never been enough to sway the population. I guess I'm not charismatic enough.
Well, Joe, let's be honest, right? You became a CISO the same year that Civil War ended. It's a different culture back then to now.
Yeah. That's true. But I've since shaved the big mustache. Thank God. But no, it's interesting with culture. There are so many different cultures, and a lot of it has to do with, with the company itself that makes it really challenging. There are organizations, there are organizations where, if you don't get, if you don't do your awareness training, or if you don't do your AML training, your money laundering training, or HR training, or whatever, you'll get little nasty grams. Someplace you get a little nasty grams, someplace you get a little thing. I have worked in places where eventually you'll get chewed out by someone.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the worst thing. I've never seen, I personally have not worked in a place where anyone had their bonus affected or promotion or, God forbid, gotten fired. Nothing even close to that. People are much more motivated by, getting their work done. But even aside from the reward and even aside from the punishment, there's the psychological aspect of it too, of people are used to working a certain way within the culture. Some places have cultures of compliance where people follow the rules very, strictly. Other places have cultures where they say, and it can vary in different departments too. Salespeople very often will say like, hey, you know what? Not taking my awareness training or me clicking on a link. I'm not going to get fired for that. But if I don't hit my quota, then I'm in big trouble.
Exactly.
Or if they don't close a deal, they're in big trouble. Or if they, another thing that can be very tough for us security people is, especially in the, in the world now, someone needs to do a presentation or needs to do a Zoom and needs to use the client's wacky,
that needs to work.
Video conferencing thing. It's got to work. Period. They got to go. They got to do it.
If it means stopping the security apps for that 1 hour. Then it's
right.
done.
And you'll get a call from upstairs that starts going, just do it.
So the GDPR training and other trainings in respective nations that require that additional training, culture changes not only in the company, not only in the team, but geographically where those offices are located. Sure. So in Asia, you might take the training less seriously, where in Europe, and I'm not saying this is true, I'm just making suggestions or examples, where in Central Europe, it might be really serious because GDPR is out the door. And then maybe in South America, it might be like, we don't care. What are you going to do?
No, Adam, you're very right. But, it kind of depends too. In Asia, we can't make a lot of assumptions or generalizations, but, in, Asia, particularly I've worked with Japanese companies, they do have a culture of compliance. And it is much more bureaucratic, and people are tend to follow rules more. Yeah. Very different than a Silicon Valley startup where they say move fast and break things, and they get into a lot of trouble even when some of them start going into regulated industries and stuff. I talked to this one guy once. It was actually pretty funny. Yeah, we're talking, and he needed some help with security or whatever. And, they were a startup, and they had recently basically they'd gone public, and they'd gotten some big government contracts and all. And, they did not have a culture of security. They said, we have startup culture. We got to do all this stuff. And I said, that's all well and good, but you've got a lot of requirements you got to meet now. And, I hate to say you got to change your corporate culture, but you do to a certain extent, or you're going to have some serious issues. And you're right. That's something that's a really tough nut to crack, because that has to go all the way to the top. At the top, they have to say, look, we are now, this is our business. This is what we're doing. And we got to change things. It's not optional. And somehow figure out, I don't know, get McKinsey in or something to figure out how to do that and keep that startup ethos or something. I don't know.
So insert disclaimer here. None of my examples had any scientific backing or any understanding. Were not meant to be, in reality, only fictitious statements were made. So
that's fine. Just don't get the COVID disclaimer on this episode, okay? I don't want that.
Oh, should I do that next?
Joe, to your point before, right? Since what I would say over the last four or 5 years, maybe, companies, all sorts of companies, have been spending a tremendous amount of money in securing the environment with tools, but no time really spent on changing the behavior. And it just shows, I believe it was, and I'll get those references, I should have them ready, but I think it was Verizon's report in 2021, the investigation report from Verizon.
Mm-hmm.
80%
the Verizon DBIR, they call it.
Yeah, it was 80% or 82% was all human data breaches due to human action or inaction.
And it's funny, we joke around about COVID, but COVID did change compliance issues also during those years because some people couldn't prove their immigration. It wasn't manually viewed, and because you couldn't come into the office, certain regulations were waived. Whether it was printing because you couldn't do split tunneling and everything else, and so a lot of you brought up COVID as a joke, but COVID did affect a lot of culture and compliance.
Oh yeah, well,
But good
absolutely.
insert there,
And
Joe. Good insert.
oh, thank you. But I mean, that's really important too, to point out, because with COVID, and I say we, I mean the whole industry, the whole IT thing, everyone, had to really, really quickly go to, really quickly adapt, and some places were, they just kind of expand their remote work. It wasn't as big of a deal as they say, despite their whining about it, saying they need more money. Other places, it was a massive change, and it was a massive change technologically, but also culturally. And remember, and we remember having talks about this, where we'd say, look, you're introducing a lot of change, and even if people are accustomed to remote work, they've used a VPN before, they've used some kind of remote work, they have a laptop, they've worked in hotels, people are upset, people are there's a lot going on, they're worried, they have a lot of things going on, they're distracted, and the bad guys took advantage of that, and they always do. And that's a really, really important component, because maybe people are not going to notice some things that they otherwise would have noticed. And I always tell my teams, especially when we have an incident, or when there's something going on, or when there's a lot of stuff, I say, guys and gals, take a breath, stay sharp, remember, this is, and then watch make sure we're watching our flanks here, because people will take advantage of this if we're too distracted. So that's a tough situation too. And I mean, not even especially for a security team, but really for everyone. That's when the social engineering really comes into play.
Well,
think about, try to get you.
Yeah, and think about this, right? So look, I live with my family, right? My kids, my wife. Not really that big of a deal. I'm not worried about.
Oh, she let you back in?
It's none of anybody's business on this podcast, Joe.
Right.
But whatever. Okay, we settled it. We got an attorney. It all worked out.
Excellent.
So the point I'm making is, what happens if you're a person living with roommates, and then you have your laptop in a common area, and you're doing work for your company, and you don't necessarily know the integrity all the time of your roommates. Maybe it's somebody that you met on, I don't know, make it up, Craigslist or something. And now you're working in the open, you go use the restroom, and they're getting proprietary and intellectual property. So yes, things have changed. Culture has changed. Forget about even COVID. Remote working has made us more susceptible to attacks, whether they're physical, meaning people are walking by your desktop and doing, shoulder surfing, or whether, your machine is out in the open, and now maybe somebody can intercept communications on the same Wi-Fi as you. I'm not saying that people are that sophisticated and doing man-in-the-middle attacks on your own network, but guess what? It could happen.
You need to act like it is, right? And then explaining that
Yes.
to the regular non-technical person, they're like, well, I'm just a Starbucks, I'm just here working, or I'm just in the airport, whatever. It's difficult to change that mindset. And to your point before with the example of the roommates, it's not just roommates. During COVID, do you know how many kids accidentally got into the parents' laptop and hit send to the wrong email, to the wrong? It happened quite frequently.
Oh, we know. And that was something we worried about a lot.
And
by the yeah,
that's because for years, right, for the last that I can remember, parents have seen, technology, iPhone and iPad, as a toy. And it's not a toy. Again, that's a culture thing. So if you're not going to change people in their home, but if you can change the culture of how they see technology within the organization, they're going to translate that into the house.
Well, you can change people in their home, because the truth is, believe me, it's a long, slow process, and this goes even beyond, work, or the culture of your specific organization. It's like we do need to change people's mindsets about stuff. Of yes, if you're if you're carrying a phone, it's like, especially if it's a company phone or whatever. Yes, it's got all the company stuff on it, etc. You need to, you need to take care of it. You need to,
Yeah.
you know,
I just protect the
you know,
screen.
you need to at least not put it down on the bar and leave it there unlocked and go to the bathroom for God. It's amazing how often simple stuff like that happens. Again, talking here at the cocktail hour, bars are a lot of security risks in a bar. But I mean, also,
Yeah, do you ever eat some of those peanuts? People put their hands in the peanuts. They go to the bathroom. It's a security risk. You can get compromised.
It is when you think about it. You can make someone ill.
No, but in all seriousness, but what happens
No.
if you're having a conversation, you're an attorney, and you're talking about a merger and acquisition while having a sandwich at a bar?
Well, that's it. Having that awareness of just, throughout of like, I'm handling or I'm speaking or doing something. Am I putting things at risk? I mean, I'm in security. I'm a nut. I'm out on my patio. I don't like to leave my laptop out there and go to the bathroom. I don't trust the neighbors.
I don't trust your cat.
Nor should you. But, just I don't know. It's people in security think a particular way. Many people in security, we kind of know everything that can happen and we're much more careful. But, other people aren't. And to tell the truth, I mean, another thing I'm big on when it comes to user experience and security is that, in fairness to people, security is too hard for most people. It is way, way too hard.
If they want to continue working how they were working, then yeah, it's just a matter of they need to learn how to work differently, to use the security tools to their advantage.
Well, they do, but it shouldn't be so hard. Frankly, it shouldn't take that much thought. It's like biometrics. Great. I can't tell you how many arguments I've gotten into with with biometrics when they say, "Oh, but on the phone, you want it to unlock every time," and I say like, "It's got Face ID. You have to look at it. You can't use the phone if you're not looking at it." I'm like, "That's easy," but putting in codes and doing a lot of other things can be much more, more complicated. Frankly, I got to be honest, when it comes to detecting phishing emails, we ask a lot of people to try to detect, we said, look for the bad English, which AI is changing, but, look for this, look for that, look for all these things. To tell the truth, I'm in security people all the time. Sometimes I get an email. I'm like, I can't tell. I can't tell if it's real or if it's, and they say, so if you do that, you need to go to another browser, look at this, or check, it is granted a little too hard for people. We do need to do a better job there.
But yeah, the email can also be a legitimate sender, just not a legitimate email. Somebody compromises my Gmail account because I didn't put on multi-factor authentication, or somebody was able to laterally move to my machine in my house with the machine already unlocked, sends you an email and says, "Hey, Joe, check out my beach pictures." Of course, Joe's excited. He wants to see my beach pictures.
I was going to say, that's the best way to get me not to look at it, but anyway.
So he opens up my email and boom, bada boom.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, I was going to say, in regards to emails, that was a really good point about you can't tell, right? Let's say from an IT infrastructure team, right? We're monitoring everything. And we put all our email addresses for all of the tools that we use, storage, servers, compute, and we get bombarded thousands and thousands of emails a day. And if a bad actor figures out, hey, saying this company's using EMC or Dell, they can fake an email alert, and you can totally hook an IT person and not know, that.
Oh yeah,
and that's really
it.
easy. It's not their fault because they get these emails thousands of times a day. How are they going to tell if it's from EMC India and it comes from all these different places? That's something to be fixed. Why use emails for alerting? That's antique.
Well, that's true. That's true. But,
email's the worst way to monitor something. But then again, who's going to sit in front of a dashboard and look for pop-ups?
Well,
if you're a small organization,
and that's why there is the importance of there is some value to having that tier approach of a certain person just doing one thing or two things, there is value in that. Even if they move on and it's a high turnover job, it's fine. But that is the focus, right? Because you can't have your engineers thinking about your engineers and your architects thinking about the future of your organization and also focusing on what's going on operationally. Not all companies are like that. Some, but
That's
the majority,
yeah.
a lot of good companies are like that, though.
Look, Letty, you, myself, and Joe have been very lucky in our careers where we've been able to experience enterprise level organizations that have SOCs and NOCs and a variation of both. And luckily, we usually have those organizations vet the alerts and vet the severity and call us, usually based on something serious. But you're 100% right. If I get an email from, NAC at anycompany.com that says that a threat actor has, it's not going to say exactly threat actor, but this device has been added to the network. Please take a look. And it looks like a regularly normal formed alert. We might click the link thinking it's legitimate. And now we've already been compromised. And especially if you and I are getting that many alerts and we have alert fatigue, you're 100% correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's on us too. And when I say us, I mean, the security community in general, to say, look, we need to put out stuff that is more trustworthy. Things like that really shouldn't come in email. We need to understand that there's, alert fatigue, and there's the MFA fatigue too. That's another disaster. But we need to have things that, we need systems that make it easier for people to act in a secure way, not that makes it difficult to act in a secure way. Because as we're seeing, even when you have someone conscientious who says, "Okay, I'm going to think," even though I'm not a security person, even though I'm under pressure, even though I got to do this, I got this, and I'm going to think for a few seconds and say, "Is it right?" They're still not experts. And I think that's a big frustration for a lot of people. I suspect that it's like, I just got to get my job done and
Let's get it done.
So so think about this, right?
Just get it done and deal with it later.
From a TTP standpoint, or tactics, techniques, and procedures, when somebody pops up an MFA alert and you click it automatically, thinking, "Oh yeah, I got to click it," and you click it, you just let a threat actor in there. We also know a certain organization that was doing a purple team that was very easily able to get into a certain portal and then change that portal during an exercise so that the SMS or text message was changed. So now that person was getting the text messages. So you might be oblivious to certain vulnerabilities in certain software because now you didn't even get the opportunity to accept or reject that MFA. So, not all MFAs are created equal.
No, not at all. And that's again why we need to. We talked about this in a previous podcast where we talk about the different types of MFA and what's the most reliable. And we said if you give people the option, they will choose the easiest one, which usually means they will choose the least secure one. And we need to give few choices, but make sure that the only choices are good ones.
Well, I'm now using an MFA that does yes for everything. I don't even get the yes or no to decline, so it's all good. Nice. I made less work.
There you go.
But
all right.
Yeah, I mean, how to help organizations in engage a cybersecurity culture. To the point that you said before, Joe, it really has to start from the top, right? And what are the goals? Let's say any company X goals is cost savings, right? Cost savings all around the board. Then you need to align your cybersecurity goals with that, right? Just a quick example, right? If you have a whole bunch of cost infrastructure and you have users that are saving local files or just copying files from in different areas, different sections, that's something, especially if you're in the cloud, that's costly. The deduplication of data, right? The duplication of data, sorry, That becomes costly, and now you've increased your risk of data breach, right? Because now it's not this file that's supposed to be protected, and the security team has done everything possible to protect that file. It's now proliferated everywhere. Um, so that comes from the top. You know, you have to lead by example, and it's all about behavior. It's the same, and it relates to outside of work, corporate work. You know, children need to start learning today that technology is not a toy. Yes, you have your video games, that's separate, but a laptop, a phone, an iPad, it's not a toy. The internet is no longer anonymous. You can make it, but it's really not. It's an extension of your life.
It's it's interesting that you say that, because as soon as you say it's not a toy, I think about my kids and even the kids that you see now. You know, you go to a restaurant or something. Well, they do. You see a 2-3-year-old with an iPad, and you know what? For them, it's a toy, and they actually are being raised for it to be a toy.
Yeah.
And oh boy, that's going to be a big challenge.
Which is why I was going to say, I'm going to be the opposite and say it doesn't start at the top. It starts at the bottom. Because all these kids who are growing up with all this equipment, if we're able to, even in school, educate them, then maybe that will it will bubble up to the top. And what I mean by that is,
with time, you mean?
In time. As a person who's knowledgeable, there are times I've gone to organizations and said, you shouldn't be doing it that way. My opinion is you should be doing it that way. And I would let the people that I was dealing with as a customer know that, and they would bubble that up to the top. So sometimes we always think at the bottom as employees, but we don't always think of the bottom as constituents or as customers or as purchasers. We need to start demanding that our organizations take our security more seriously.
Well, we do, but it's funny. Here are the challenges. I can tell you, I haven't been doing this. Up at the top, look, security is important to a lot of organizations, but it's one concern. And some of these things we're talking about, they're risks. It's like, and they're trying to balance, what is the risk of a security breach against losing sales, spending too much money, duplicating files a little, we're engineers here. We like things to be as efficient as they can be. And the truth is, executives are willing to accept a little bit of inefficiency because they're looking at the big picture of, in the end, what's our, how much money are we making? What's the right mix? But,
risk versus rewards.
Right. Exactly. Cost benefit, actually. But, when we're talking about the users too, the people actually, with their hands on the keyboards, eyes on the screen, whatever, that's a huge, huge challenge too, because again, we have what do they call the kids now? The digital natives or whatever that I guess did grow up with all this stuff. And the truth is they have not been educated very well in general in the dangers of this, and I mean, it's like, I know, I have kids, at school every once in a while, every year or so, they have, I don't know, officer email or something come in and tell them about the dangers of cyberbullying or some nonsense like that. When the truth is, they're exposed to so much. None of these things that they're using are designed to, protect them from that, certainly not automatically, and not even to encourage any kind of behavior that would be, safer and more secure. If anything, they're encouraging the exact opposite. And those are the people now. I think the first generation of them now are actually coming into the
workforce.
Into the workforce. And I can tell you, from a security standpoint, that is a huge challenge. People it's like, what do you mean I can't do this? What do you mean I can't do this? What do you mean I can't do this? It's like, well, it's like, this is a bank, or this is, the government or something. This is not, your dad's couch or whatever.
So that previous comment just lost all our listeners in the 8-year-old to 15-year-old category.
Fortunately, we're not very strong in that demographic.
We just lost 10,000 listeners just by that alone.
That's what we need next. We need what is it, a millennial or a Gen Z or someone to come on and be the counterpoint. Tell us old people how the world really works.
But there's a problem on
The
both
young-
sides of the spectrum, though. It's not just the young ones coming in; it's also the older generation that's still, kicking it hard in the workforce. Actually, really good, but they're used to working a certain way, and any new tools for security just interrupts their way of working. Now you want them to unlearn everything that they've been doing for
Yeah, but
XYZ.
Letty,
Yes.
And
You
the,
can't
and the new
compromise.
generation is the same way too. It's like, well, I'm used to just putting myself everything on social media. You can't.
I'm not
Okay.
worried about the
Extremes.
generation that uses an abacus.
What?
Okay. Abacuses. Abaci?
Abacuses.
Okay, so we've now determined that this is a disaster amongst the older workers, and it's also a disaster amongst the younger workers. And now we understand why virtually all security people drink. So there we go. And by the way, Letty, I am growing very fond of this mezcal. I got to be honest, as the show goes on.
Can we actually do one of our episodes really at a bar?
Yeah,
Well, that would
we
break
can.
everything that we just talked about right now. Just
Yeah, I
about
know.
security
So
at a bar is.
let's live vicariously through a bar.
It can be done through the magic of. I don't
Didn't
know,
they have in
video
Get
or something.
Smart? They have those cones of silence. We can do that.
Well, that's no fun. All right, I think with that, it sounds like we're coming up against last call here.
Last call for alcohol. Oh, I'm sorry.
Last call. That's right. So, Letty, any final thoughts?
I guess final thoughts really is implementing cybersecurity culture is difficult, but it has to get done in order to really minimize all the risks and take advantage of all the companies, the money and the effort that they've been putting into these tools to protecting their systems and data. The only piece that's left right now is changing the behavior in the workplace. And that's going to take time eventually, but I think it'll happen. There's a lot of people that are seeing it. A lot of articles out there about cybersecurity culture. So eventually, it'll probably be a policy in one of our, new NIST.
Oh, I'm sure
It'll become a
Lots of
policy.
stuff.
What's your culture like on security? So.
I know. Well, that's it. Sometimes you get a question from an auditor, like, "What are you doing about your culture?" It's like, I put out a video. Or something.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
I
And COVID just
will-
enhanced it, by the way.
Yes, well, it made it more challenging through yes. I'll tell you, at the risk of trying to sound too clever, I'll make this statement. You have a security culture if you have an organization, whether you realize it or not. Doesn't mean it's a good one. Doesn't mean you deliberately created it, but you have one, and be aware of it. And please be aware of that, and be somewhat kind to your security people who are trying to work through it.
Bring them food and money, and
there you
give
go.
them and pay for their kids' school, things like that.
Because that is one of the most challenging things to work through. If, again, like I said, I have kids, and if you've ever had kids, you cannot make anyone do anything they really don't want to do or aren't interested in. It is impossible.
But you can adapt their behavior. That is proven fact.
Yes, you can.
If you adapt their behavior,
you can work on the culture.
do the right thing, that frees up the security team to actually focus on those really, really tough incidents, catching them early.
That's
Maybe.
right. Okay. All right.
Alrighty.
Well, Letty, thank you very
Thanks
much
for having me.
for joining. This has been a great discussion.
So we have a
But,
guest. You won't let me do my final thoughts? Is that how it is, Joe?
Please give us your final thoughts, Adam. You know what, Adam? I am going to give you the last word here. It's all you.
The last word is pack everything up, get rid of all your electronics, get a notepad, a pen, a paper, move to a cave, don't engage anybody else, and you'll be safe. All good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. And despite what Adam said, we will have another episode coming. We're not closing up shop, all right?
I hope this was an enjoying
right.
topic. I think you could spin up a few more out of this.
Oh, we'll do more on this. We'll do it again.
And-
All right.
And I just want to add one thing. Though it was a little bit overwhelming, the amount of mail that we got, we're still looking forward to additional feedback. Mail. All hate mail goes to Joe, and all creative and beautiful comments go to Adam.
That's right. We love feedback. It's feedback@securitycocktailhour.com or at @seccocktailhour on Twitter. Talk to us. Give us your thoughts. Like I said, we love hate mail. It's cool, and we're available for events, birthday parties, consulting, and
Bar mitzvahs.
Bar mitzvahs. That's right. All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you
everyone.
guys for having me.
Take care.